about belonging, you know? And belonging is to feel seen. It's to feel noticed, to feel appreciated, to be able to relate to other people. And we all need belonging, right? That's a core, basic human need. And at Avon, we talk about belonging a lot, right? Everyone belongs. You belong here. We're actively working at creating a culture of belonging. We want everyone who walks with us to experience that. And you know what I was thinking? If that's all we do, that's a pretty great thing. If we're just a community where people actually experience genuine belonging, you know what? I think God will be pleased with that. But as a Christ community, I actually think we're called to do more. Even when it comes to belonging, I think there's a deeper meaning and sense of belonging in the context of Christ community than what we can experience anywhere else. And I'm going to start with this. Things are going to get a little confusing for a while. Stay with me. I think we're going to resolve it at the end. And if not, we'll just have Bruce come up and play the song again, and we're going to feel good at the end. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 22 to 24. Put off your former way of life. Put off your old self, which is being corrupted by deceitful desires, and be renewed in the spirit of your minds. Put on the new self, which is created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. Now, there's a lot in there. In fact, in some respects, I've been spending the last 30 years of my life trying to understand what is in that context of that passage. But that context is really the heart of the gospel message of Christ. In fact, I was going to read for you 12 more passages of Scripture that said basically the same thing. But I thought, you know what? I think they'll get it. But the general idea that we are crucified with Christ, and then we are reborn, we are made new spiritually. When Jesus says, you must lose yourself to find yourself, this is just at the very heart of the message of Christ. That we let go of our old self, our old identity, and we put on this new self, this God-given identity. And it's not a one-time event. You know, I used to think that. You know, I went to a church where we would name the date that we were saved. You know, August 27th, 1985. And that's it. I don't really need to do anything else. My name is written in the book of life. And now, there are pivotal moments in our spiritual journey. There are significant shifts that happen along the way. But our becoming our new self, our God-given identity, is a process. It's not a one-and-done deal that happens in an instant. So why am I sharing this in the context of identity and belonging? Well, this means the task of a Christ community contains a paradoxical tension. There it is. You knew it was coming. A paradoxical tension. Because we're not only creating a culture of belonging where we accept one another as we are. We're also encouraging and helping one another to put off the old self and to live into our God-given identity. We're accepted as we are, but we're also intended to be changed, to grow, to be transformed. And that tension is tricky to navigate and to balance, right? In fact, most churches don't do it that well. In fact, many churches, sometimes intentionally, sometimes inadvertently, as we try to get rid of that tension by getting rid of the paradox. We do that in two ways, us churches. The first one is we offer acceptance with no expectation to grow or be transformed and changed. So we'll say things like, you're fine the way you are. You're okay the way you are. Just be you in your current mode of existence. And the problem with that is it's just not true. I need to grow. I need to change. There's stuff in my life that I need to work on, that I need to be moving from my old self, my old identity, into my God-given identity. And the same is true for you. Here's the paradox of acceptance. The paradox of acceptance is this. When you accept yourself fully, that means you also accept your need to grow and change, your desire to grow and change. If you're really in tune with yourself, you want to grow and change. You want to become the best possible version of yourself. You want to fulfill your potential, right?
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
No, that's
okay.
That's awesome.
So that's the one way we try to get rid of the tension is, you're okay, you're accepted, don't worry about it. The other way we get rid of this tension is we make acceptance dependent upon fulfilling certain expectations. So what some churches do is they make belonging dependent on you becoming who they think you should be. What often happens is they'll give you a little bit of belonging. You know, it's sort of like a teaser. A little bit of belonging. They're like, hey, if you really want to be one of us, then you know, you're just being this way. And then so you do all this stuff, and then you're like, okay, now you're belonging. Hey, if you want to belong even more, like really be one of us, then and they kind of string you along, right? And what it does is it loses that tension between full acceptance as you are, and also this encouragement to grow and transform. And what they're doing is it's not creating a culture of belonging, it's creating a culture of fitting in. Fitting in. You know Brené Brown?
Yeah.
Brilliant, right? So she's famous. She did some TED Talks, and I think she's done some conversations with Oprah. And she talks a lot about shame and vulnerability. That's been her area of expertise. And she said this: the opposite of belonging is fitting in. The opposite of belonging is fitting in. I thought that was really interesting. You know, fitting in is when, I need to figure out how to present myself to the group so that I can receive acceptance. Trying to change myself so that I will be fully received. To figure out what parts of myself, what aspects of myself I present to the group, and which parts and aspects I need to hide in order to experience belonging. That's fitting in. I don't know if it's, when I was in high school, there was a lot of fitting in going on. I don't know if it's still like that. I'm sure you guys are completely enlightened, and there's none of that kind of peer pressure or judgment at all. But back in my day, boy, fitting in felt like survival. And, I grew up in a trailer. My parents were poor. So I'd show up with my shoes from the byway, It did not help my quest to fit in, right? Anyone have these memories of not fitting in? I mean, that stays with us, those memories. Oh, my goodness. It's a full-time job trying to fit in. Amen. Now, the flip side of fitting in is entitlement. The belief that I don't have to change or do anything to receive acceptance. In fact, the group has to change to accommodate me as I am. Yeah? You ever meet someone like that? Entitlement assumes that no matter what parts of myself that I present to the group, I'm entitled to belonging and to be accepted and to be celebrated because I'm so special. Even if I'm a jerk, even if I'm selfish, even if I only take and I never contribute, even if I exhibit toxic tendencies, that doesn't matter because I'm entitled to be accepted as I am. You will never experience true belonging if you have this attitude of entitlement. For so many reasons. It's just not very becoming. People don't tend to gravitate towards people with that entitled attitude, right? In fact, most people will begin to resent you. Even the godly people, they won't resent you because they don't do that. But what they will do is eventually they will start to establish firm boundaries with you because you're not a healthy person. You'll never experience belonging with entitlement. But here's the thing, you will never experience genuine belonging if you're trying to fit in. Belonging is different. In fact, what is belonging? Well, I think it's right in the word, belonging. It's our longing to be. Longing to be who you are. The freedom to be. That's what belonging is, the fulfillment of that longing to just be your authentic self. And in order to experience belonging, we have to find a group, a culture, an environment that actually empowers us, invites us to be our authentic self. But here's the thing. Here's the thing about Christ's community. Genuine belonging It isn't just accepting you in your current mode of existence, the status quo of your current mode of existence. Remember, the point of Christ community is that you will experience this transformation from your old self to your new self, your true self, your authentic self. So genuine belonging isn't you feeling comfortable. Let's say you're slightly rude, or you're condescending to people who are different than you, or you tend to manipulate people, or maybe you tend to complain a lot, or you habitually play the victim, or maybe you're a bit prejudiced, or maybe you use people, take people for granted. Whatever it is, we've all got stuff, right? So a belonging culture doesn't just make you feel comfortable abiding in that current mode of your status quo. A true culture of belonging doesn't say, oh, well, that's just who Bob is, that's just who Betty is. Why? Because that's not who Bob really is. That's not who Betty really is. That's not their God-given identity. That's part of the old self that they need to put off. That's part of the old identity that's still lingering. A genuine Christ community is constantly extending an invitation to people to become who they authentically are. And the reason you tend to be rude or condescending or manipulative or whatever your thing is, some of us have more than one thing, but whatever your thing is, the reason you are like that is because somewhere along life's road you had to develop a persona and certain traits in order to protect yourself, to survive. And that's the thing about a culture of belonging. It brings awareness, not judgment. And that's a difficult art, to bring awareness without judgment. And that's part of one of the things that a healthy, genuine Christ culture that's cultivating belonging will bring awareness of. Most of your negative traits and characteristics that you possess, that's learned behavior. Those are cultivated attributes and energy that you needed at one point in your life to survive, to protect yourself. Those things don't make you bad. They were probably necessary. They're probably gifts at one point in your journey. You feeling me? That's an important truth to recognize. But here's another important truth to recognize. When we operate in that mode, that's not who we really are. The point of Christ community, like I said, it's not judgment. It's to bring awareness and empower one another to become our authentic self. To experience genuine belonging is really about trust, right? I found this group of people that I trust to call me on my stuff without judgment. Wow, that's precious. I trust this group of people enough that I can start to let my persona go. I can let my walls down. I can let my guard down. I can lose my script. And I can begin to let my authentic self emerge. And here's the thing, when we do that, when we find that kind of culture of belonging and begin to let our authentic self emerge, usually no one's more surprised than us when our authentic self begins to emerge. A culture of belonging lives in this tension between extending grace and compassion for how we are, while upholding the call to become who we are. And this is the thing about a Christ culture of belonging, is that it makes a distinction between how we are and who we are. How you are, if I ask you, how are you, that's going to change depending on the day, depending on the time of day, maybe the minute, right? How you are changes. It's constantly shifting because it's reactive. It's responding to your circumstances. It's responding to what has happened, what is happening, what will happen. It's a reactive identity. But how you are is rarely who you are. There's a distinction there. And God's call is for you to shift your identity from how you are to who you are. Who you are doesn't change. Your God-given identity is proactive. It's not reactive. In fact, see, how you are identity. Do you remember the Verve song of a million different people from one day to the next, Bittersweet Symphony? Oh, I should have had you play that. Next week we'll play that song. Constantly shifting. I think it was Heraclitus who said, the person who steps into the river never steps into the same river twice, because the river's never the same river and the person's never the same person, right? How we are is constantly changing because it's reactive to what's going on out there. Who we are never changes. In fact, it's the flip side. It's proactive. And what happens when we start operating from our God-given identity is it shapes how we perceive and interact with what's going on out there. It's the flip side of our reactive, how you are identity. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. When you're living from your God-given identity, you don't experience shame. You don't. Doesn't matter what's going on out there. Doesn't matter what other people are saying about you or to you. Doesn't matter how much you've messed up. You don't experience shame. Because what happens out there doesn't determine your sense of self. Your God-given identity does not change, and that becomes the lens through which you perceive and interpret and interact with what's happening out there, even your own behavior. This is why the Apostle Paul says, when he's in Romans 7, when he's saying, I keep messing up. I can't do the things I want to do, and I keep doing the things I don't want to do. And then he says, but that's not me. Which kind of sounds like, a Bart Simpson remark, right? That wasn't me. Or the devil made me do it, right? But that's not what he's doing. He understands, 2,000 years before we started talking about self-fulfilling prophecy, he understands that what we identify with, that is going to shape our behavior as we continue to identify with it. So when he messes up, he's like, that's not me. That's not who I really am. That's how I am. Because the Leafs just lost last night. That's how I am right now in this mode. But that's not who I am. And the more we lean into that God-given identity, our behavior, our manifestation of who we are begins to change and align with that. It sounds simple, this shift, moving from how you are to who you are, but it's a total game changer. And I'll close with this. So, a friend of mine, after my message last week on identity, he told me about the victory speech of pro golfer Scotty Scheffler. And as he was talking, I didn't know who Scotty Scheffler was. I don't follow golf. Does anyone know who Scotty Scheffler is? Okay, a few people. But after he told me about this, he won the Masters. And it's the second time he's won the Masters. And the more I research Scotty Scheffler, I'm like, wow, this guy's amazing. Like, he's like the next Tiger Woods of golfing. And he's I think the fifth youngest person to win the Masters twice. Quite an impressive resume. So he gives his press interview after winning the Masters for the second time in his green jacket. Oh, that green jacket. It's kind of silly to me, but I guess, hey, whatever, Anyone want a green jacket? It's even a weird color. I just don't get it. But anyway, it's quite prestigious. It's like the award to win in golfing. And he, in his press interview, fascinated me because he talks about identity and he talks about community. In fact, he says, I had friends come and stay with me because his wife is about to give birth to their child. So normally she comes, but she couldn't come. So he brought a group of friends with him. He said, I needed the community to help me stay grounded in my true identity, my God-given identity. And then he said this, so interesting. He says, my buddies told me this morning, this was the morning of the final day of the tournament. My buddies told me this morning, my victory was secure on the cross. And that's a pretty special feeling, to know that I'm secure forever. And it doesn't matter if I win this tournament or lose this tournament, my identity is secure forever. That really intrigued me. Why would he focus on that? The number one golfer in the world. I've got to admit, I've had ego tendencies in my life. And if I was the number one golfer in the world, I would probably be leaning into that identity. Hey, I'm Troy, #1 golfer in the world. That's my identity. But the reason Scotty is focusing on that is because he understands the difference between how you are and who you are. How he is right now is the #1 golfer in the world. He understands that in 30 years that's probably not going to be the case. Doesn't matter, that's not who he is, that's how he is. Right now, that's his current mode of existence. Who he is this eternal identity in Christ, his God-given identity. And I found that so fascinating. What happens out there, whether you win or lose, that isn't your identity. Your identity is secure in Christ. Now, you don't have to understand the theological complexities of how the cross saves you and secures your identity forever. You don't have to understand the nuances of atonement theory. In fact, I'm always kind of amused when people come up to me because they've read 3 books and they're very confident in their understanding of the atonement. And as I get older, I'm being more humble in my response of amusement at their excitement. But I have spent the last 30 years reading most of the great theologians on topics like the atonement. The greatest minds from the early church fathers to theologians who are alive today. And they don't agree. It's so complex. It's so complex. But the good news is we don't have to understand it. Understanding it is not the point. The point is experiencing its reality. It's experiencing the reality that Simon Peter experienced when Jesus said to him, Hey, Peter, you probably think that your identity is based on your parents, and your heritage, and your past, your fishing, family, lineage, your success, your failures, your temperament. That's not who you are, Peter. That's how you are. That's not who you are. Who you are is, and then he reveals. And he reveals. What I love about it is he reveals pretty specific things. I could be wrong, but my understanding is that the risen Christ wants to reveal to each and every one of us particularities about our unique identities. Not just the generic, you're loved, you're a child of God. And by generic, I don't mean to undermine its importance. If you really experience that, the unconditional love of God, mind-blowing, completely that's a spiritual awakening. So I'm not undermining it by saying it's generic. By generic, I just mean it applies to all of us. But the risen Christ wants to reveal particularities to you. But that happens over time. It's a long process. I don't know, I haven't decided yet, but I think I'll talk about that a little bit next week. We'll see. Who knows what will happen next week. The point is this. Your identity is not what goes on out there or your perception of what goes on out there. Your identity is a gift from God. It's a gift from God, and nobody can take that away from you. Nothing can take that away from you. Your identity is secure forever. And if you want to find freedom and peace and fulfillment and personal power in life, be open to the Spirit revealing your